Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone. We're actually going with Abraham, the first Jew. We went from Lech Lecha. We're going into, we had this Shabbat with the Vayera and Chaye Sarah. So it's a couple of weeks where we're going for the journey of the first Jew. And this is a good time to ask a question. How is a Jew, how is a tzaddik, how's the right person supposed to be? Is he supposed to be a person that that buys things, that acquires things, that has many assets, or is he supposed to be a person that's spiritual and has nothing of his own and cares about no material objects? So how's a Jew supposed to be? And if we look at Abraham, if we look at after that, if we look at Yitzchak and Yaakov, if we look at all our fathers in the Torah, we see that their assets, the things that they acquire, the things that they buy, are very important to them. We can give a couple examples. One of the most famous examples that we have is that Jacob goes back to pick up some small vessels that he left on the other side of the river. So he goes back for a very small quantity and quality of product that he left over, and he was very wealthy, and he still cared. And we can see by Isaac, we can see that the Torah specifically says that he had a lot of success in planting and in his agricultural different acquisitions. And by Abraham, we see many times that he had many cattle and sheep. And I even heard once, again, these things, we have our faith, so it's not a big deal for us, but I did hear that there was a scroll that was found about a very, very wealthy person that roamed the area, that some people said that refers to Abraham. So you can see that even there, what people noticed is his wealth, the things that he has purchased. Now, so looking at it, it's a very good time, and Reb Ginsburg started last Shabbat speaking about acquiring, purchasing. Purchasing is called the kinyan. Kinyan has, you can translate it as either an asset or purchasing or acquiring or buying, the act of purchasing. So there's a bunch of translations that could translate this word, but obviously in Hebrew, the source, it has a couple very special meanings. Something I noticed, and this is from the Noam Elimelech, as we try to say every week for something from him, is that he said that Abraham was, again, going around in the land and acquiring things. But what was his main thing that he acquired? So it says, Avraham Zaken. He explains the pasuk that simple Zaken means old, that Abraham was old. But we know that in those days, the years that Abraham lived was not considered old. The famous Perush is that the word Zaken, being old, which Rabbi Nachman has a famous saying that a person should never be old, should always be young, always rejuvenated. I always remember the picture of Rav Ginsburg a couple years ago at his age, not that old, but still running, literally almost running to shul for the bris of my son. And my wife told me that she was amazed by the energy that he had. So again, Avraham Zaken, Abraham was old, but Zaken in the meaning Zekana Chochma. you can take it to say this person has purchased, has acquired wisdom. And what is the wisdom of Abraham? Ve'avraham zaken, the pasuk says, Ve'avraham zaken ba bayamim, that he comes with his days. There's a famous explanation that when you count, when you look at the days that we live, out of every day, there's times we sleep and go to the restroom and eat, and a day could be very much wasted. This also has to do with the Yom Yom that we just read, that a day is something to be cherished. Every day is important. Now, what did he know? What did he acquire? He acquired the wisdom of learning that every day is a day borrowed. When it's kind of like, as they say, you're on borrowed time. This world is based on borrowed time. You borrow the neshama, our soul borrows a certain amount of days and comes to this world to get things done. And when you know this really well, when, as the famous Mishnah says, that every day a person should think that it's as if it's his last day, to act that it's serious, that there's not an infinite amount of days, that time is important. And when you know that your time is important, you come with your days. You act on every single day. Now, what are we buying? What are we acquiring, and how do we buy it? Many people like to say that our generation is a generation of shopping, of buying. Everyone always buys and looks into buying and is consumed by buying, which is why the India and other countries have a huge culture of disconnecting from the world. They look at it and they say that the Western culture is all about purchasing and buying, and they're not able to think with all the amount of, call it junk, that people acquire. So this has a lot to do with what Rav Ginsburg is trying to, and now hopefully Bezrat Hashem, Rav Ginsburg said that he may give a series on purchasing and buying and the power of acquisition. So the first thing that we learn about kinyan, about purchasing, is that a kinyan needs da'at, needs wisdom, or you can call it consent or agreement. If you want to sell something and you want the other side to buy, even halachically, even simple law is that there must be consent between the two sides. If I am not consenting to selling to you, then the sale is not valid. And if you don't consent to buy it, then the purchase is not valid. One of the main things that there needs to be a da'at, knowledge, knowledge in the form of not just having wisdom, but knowledge in the form of having a practical agreement, practical consent of this purchase, or a consent of this sale. So there's da'at koneh, the agreement or consent of the purchaser, and da'at makneh, and the agreement of the person selling. Now, one of the main sales that we have in Torah, one of the main sales is kiddushin. Very interesting, and again, on the surface, it's almost upsetting that one of the main things that a person can buy is he can buy a wife. And all of a sudden this is almost against Torah. Torah is always about having love and having a real relationship, and not something where you're just like you buy things, you buy a wife. So why is that okay? That kiddushin, that the marriage ceremony is considered acquisition, a purchase. The law of kiddushin is the law of acquisition. Now, how was it before Torah was given? The Rambam, very interesting. Anyone that reads Rambam and wants to see how Maimonides looks at marriage, He says like this: before Torah, if a person wanted to marry, he would meet a woman on the street, they would consent to getting married, they would go home, and that would be marriage. And after Torah was given, there's now a kiddushin. Now he needs to do a certain act of purchasing in order for this to take place. Why is that important? So we spoke about it about 2 months ago. We explained it when we talked about divorce, that one of the main reasons that it's so important to create this marriage as a purchase is for it to be something that's long lasting. Before Torah, one day you get married, then 5 minutes later you walk out of the house and that's it. There's nothing binding. In order to create a bond in the marriage, you need to create it as an acquisition. So again, we said that the word kinyan that we're talking about and the word and kiddushin is a form of kinyan. Now, what is the kinyan in kiddushin? What is the object that is sold? So the object is the wife. A woman is selling herself in this case. And again, we said that if you look at it on the surface, it's very bothersome. Like, how are you even talking like that? That's not the way to talk these days. But if we look at the inner side of it, we see very interesting. That object, chefetz, in Hebrew, is the same word as the inner desire. That when a woman is selling herself, she's selling an object, chefetz, herself, really she's selling the desire to be married. And now it's already starting to be an inner thing, something very interesting to look at. Now, there's a huge machloket, there's a disagreement between the sages. What makes a purchase? A normal purchase, someone wants to sell his apple and the buyer wants to buy the apple and they agreed on $1. So the apple is at the table and the buyer said to the seller, okay, here's your $1. He gives him $1. And now he goes to grab the apple and the apple falls off the table and gets ruined. Who's responsible? So the question becomes, what creates the act of the sale? Is it the fact that the money was transferred? Or is it the fact that the apple changed hands, which in Hebrew is called meshicha or agbaha, to raise or to take ownership of the object? Now, so again, two sages, one said that the money, even when we say that the money is what makes the purchase, he says that Chachamim said that even though I'm telling you the money makes the purchase, we still want you to pick up the object. Why? So the person wouldn't not keep the object. Let's say we go to the market, we create a sale transaction. Now I go home, I have no reason to save your asset. So in order for a person to save, Chachamim said, the sages said, okay, you have a responsibility. But the real act of sale is the transfer of money. That's what Rabbi Yochanan says. That the Torah's agreement of the sale happens when money transfers. Reish Lakish says, anyone that knows the background story, Rabbi Yochanan is more referred as the tzaddik, as the comparison to the most righteous person, and Reish Lakish is usually compared to a Baal Tshuva. He had a very interesting life. So very interestingly, if we want to look at the inner part of this machloket, of this disagreement, what are we looking at? We're looking at two concepts. One concept would say that a righteous person, a tzaddik, has knowledge, and he wants to sell that knowledge. He wants students in order to make his knowledge be worthwhile. We know that a person can have infinite knowledge. If he can't do anything with it, it's meaningless. So he wants to teach. And the student, in this case, Reish Lakish, wants to buy. He wants to. Now, what is more important? If we say that the most important thing is the is the seller, is the tzaddik in this case, then what is most important to him? Most important thing to him is the money. The money here represents the students. So then when the money transfers, the sale is done. On the other hand, the student looks at it and says, I need this Torah, I need to learn, I need the education, I need the Torah that my Rav has. The most important thing for him is the Torah, is what he's buying. And therefore, the only thing that takes it is when he gets Meshicha, when he pulls the object. So again, we're seeing how when we look at the inner dimension of things, we're able to shed some new light on this disagreement. So going back to the kinyan of a marriage, what has to happen? A woman wants to sell herself. In Torah, it's very simple, even though it was back thousands of years ago when women did not have the level that now they have obviously based on Kabbalah, that the women towards the end of days they would rise. But we can also see it in the simple world that women have today a lot more say in all cultures, obviously some less and some more. But even back then, many thousands of years ago, still Torah says that the only way to marry a woman is with her consent. So she has to sell her desire, her object, to the man. What does the man have to do? He has to find the woman and obviously to buy her in this case. But what is the Meshicha? The word Meshicha is used in order to reflect the purchase by way of picking it up. So what is again, when you have an apple and you're selling the apple, there's a transfer of funds, transfer of money, and then there's picking up the apple. Those two actions together create a sale. Where is there a Meshicha, picking up, in a marriage? So very interestingly, the word Meshicha in Hebrew also is for desire, which means that the inner part of a marriage means that the husband, or the husband to be, the man, has to convince the woman that she desires him, that he would be a good husband. And that desire creates the basis for the marriage. You would think, if you go back, if we go back to looking at it as a simple purchase, if a man comes and says, I'm willing to offer you a good life, and a woman says, yeah, I want to have a good life, everyone wants to have a good life, then that would be enough to create a marriage. Deal is a deal. But we can see that the Torah requires something deeper, a deeper desire that has to be. Now, Rav Ginsburg didn't say it, but to me, it was very simple, that it needs to be the same thing with everything that a person does. So let's try to give an example. A person wants to do business. Okay, so he goes out to the world. He says, what should I do? He finished learning, he finished yeshiva. He now has this person is married, or let's say the woman of the house, her child is now old enough to go to play group, and now she wants to go to work. What should a person do? So normally you would think a job is a job. Go make some money, no matter what the job is, as long as it's a good job, or whatever are the terms that you need. A job is a job. But Torah teaches us that there needs to be a desire. You need to want the position that you're in. You need to want the marriage that you're going into. You need to want the acquisition. If you're going to buy a house, buy something that you want. Don't buy it because it's a good deal. Buy it because you want to buy it. As we said many times, that a chassid doesn't need to do anything. He always wants. Something very deep. This has to do with the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that there are 5 things that Hashem acquired in the world. Now, this is very interesting. We say every day that Hashem is koneh hakol. He acquires everything. The whole world is Hashem's world. What does the Mishnah mean that there's 5 things that Hashem acquired in the world? So the inner explanation to this is that acquired means that he's one with. We say in every month when we do Kiddush Levana, in the prayer we say to the Levana, we say to the moon, Baruch Osech, blessed Hashem who creates you, Asiyah, Baruch Yotzrech, Baruch Borech, Baruch Konech. So there's 4 things. And if we want to look at how these things are made, the first thing is Asiyah. Asiyah is the lower world. What do you do in that world? You fix things. This world is meant to be fixed. We're all fixers. We come into this world to make it better, make the world better. Next level is to create things. Yetzirah is to take objects and create. When we go to the higher world, it's to Bria is the actual creation, not just to create from something that exists, but to create from nothing. That's a higher world. But the highest world, the world of Atzilut, and again, we're not going to explain it in depth. Whoever knows understands a little bit more. But conceptually, the world of Atzilut is called the world of Kinyan, of purchasing, of acquisitions. Why is that? Because when you purchase something, you take it, as they say, as is. When you fix something or when you create something, then you're making it better. But when you buy something, you buy it as is. You love it the way it is. Obviously, it's like that in a marriage, but it's also like that in everything that we purchase. Buying something means that I'm looking at it the way it is right now and I'm buying it. And I'm becoming one with it. It becomes mine in a sense that I'm one with it. Very, very interesting. The halakha says that when you purchase real estate, you have to hold it. When you purchase land, you can't pick it up. We said now that purchasing means to pick up something, but you can't pick up a piece of land. So what do you have to do? You have to hold it. How do you hold it? What happens if you sleep on the ground? Is that considered holding it? No. By halakha, the only way to hold land is to make it better, is to do something to improve it. Warren Buffett, lehavdil, says that the best strategy for purchasing is to buy it forever. Not always does that work out, but conceptually, you wanna buy something. When you're buying something, you don't think to sell it. Today, in today's generation, many people buy in order to sell. And there is something about doing that. It's a different plan. But the real acquisition is when you're buying without the plan of selling. It says, emet, truth, keneve al timkor. Buy and don't sell. You buy truth, but you don't sell it. Real acquisition is to buy something and to become one with it. It's mine. Where do we see that? In the marriage. Now, we know that in Jewish marriage, there's an inner depth where a person, the man that's buying, which the simple side is a woman is selling herself and the man is buying her. But the inner depth of it that Chassidut teaches us by the famous story of the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, the story is that one time he heard his wife saying, mine, Zok says. She meant my husband, but mine says. And he fell on the floor with such excitement about hearing this, that he belongs to his wife. He says, with one mitzvah, by doing one purchase, I belong to my wife. How many mitzvot am I doing for Hashem every day? Meaning the connection, the acquisition creates connection. And that connection could be something real, something that you're buying something, but you're selling. It says that by buying a Jewish slave, we know that Baruch Hashem, slavery is not acted today, but the Torah has an input on slavery that's amazing, phenomenal. If you think of how many years ago this was introduced. But we look at a slave as something very important. The Gemara said that when you buy a slave, you buy a master for yourself. In a sense, when you acquire something, you're also selling yourself to it. The two sides go together. So we're going back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that there's 5 things that Hashem acquired in the world. And we said that the inner depth is those things, you can see how Hashem becomes one with them. What's the first thing? What's the most important purchase, acquisition that Hashem makes in the world? Torah. It says Hashem, the Torah says about herself, Hashem kanani reshit darko. Hashem bought me, kanani, bought me in the beginning. Kedem mifalav ma'az, before he had all his factories, all his, again, from this pasuk, we learned that every person should have a factory, should have a company, should have a world. But again, what is the world for? Why did Hashem, Bereshit bara Elokim, in the beginning, why did Hashem create the world? To be one with Torah. So to acquire Torah, to learn Torah, to not just learn on the outside. Again, we learn that a real Kinyan Torah, to acquire Torah is to become one with it. So the child of that relationship is the world. Where Hashem becomes one with Torah, then there is the world. So that's the first thing that Hashem acquires. What's the next thing? The Mishnah says the next thing is Shamayim v'aretz, the heaven and the earth. Now, Reb Isaac from Hummel says that heaven and earth is the inner and outer part of the world, of reality. Now, it doesn't say the heaven by itself and the earth by itself. Together, Hashem acquires both sides of the world, the inner side and the outer side of the world. As they say, everything is Hashem. Now, what's the most amazing thing in the Mishnah? You can look at it from various angles, but obviously Torah is the first. But what's the next thing? Next thing is Abraham, the first Jew. Hashem acquires Abraham. He becomes one with Abraham. When you look at a real tzaddik, a real child of Abraham, a real Jew, you can see that Hashem is one with him. That Hashem purchased the right person. He acquired the real asset. This tzaddik, this Jew, we're all sons of Abraham. We're all tzaddikim in this sense. Hashem acquired us in that sense that he has us. And we represent him in the world. We're one with him. What's the next thing is Israel. That Hashem, it says, we said the word chefetz, which is object, but it's also desire. It says by Am Yisrael, V'adiri kol chefetzi bam, that Hashem's desire, what does Hashem love? Hashem loves Israel. He desires us, and therefore he purchases us. We sell ourselves to him, and he purchases us. And therefore we become one with him. And finally, Beit HaMikdash, temple, again, Beit HaMikdash is the place that Hashem is represented in this world. Is a representation. Everyone tries to speak about the temple in various forms, but the reality of Beit HaMikdash, of having a temple, is a place where Hashem can dwell. But it should represent the fact that the world is worthy to have Hashem, that Hashem can have Dira B'Tachtonim, a place, a dwelling place in the lower worlds, in our world. Now, how do we buy? How do we have a kinyan? Now, this shiur is a bit deep, so we'll end it soon. But this whole kinyan, this whole process of purchasing, how does a person acquire things? How do you buy something? So there's a very special pasuk, last pasuk, it says, V'amen b'Hashem, he had faith, he had emunah in Hashem, v'yachsheveh lo letzedakah. The simple explanation is that Abraham believed in Hashem, and Hashem considered it charity. He considered it something special. But the Kotzker and in Chassidut it explains that Abraham considered his faith as tzedakah, charity from Hashem. Hashem gave him this ability to have faith. Abraham is the Rosh Kol HaMaaminim, the head of all believers. Real faith begins and comes from the first Jew, Abraham. What is the difference between faith? Many people knew Hashem. From first man until Abraham, many people knew Hashem. But real faith, having real faith in Hashem, that only started with Abraham. There are three things. There's to know something, hakara. To know something, that's the first step in anything, where you know a certain thing. Then there is tchusha, you have a sense in it. Sometimes you don't know something, but you sense that this is the right thing, the wrong thing, etc. And then the last step is the faith. Faith is something that has a step. Rabbi Isaac from Hummel explains that many times when you listen to something and you're blown away by it, you don't understand it, that's already coming to the faith level. When you hear something, a Torah words, and you're saying, wow, this is something, then you're learning with faith. Then afterwards, when you understand it, Rabbi Isaac from Hummel said that there were two steps in his faith. First, he learned from the first Rebbe of Chabad, the Alter Rebbe, how to have small faith in our sense, katnut, not just in the sense of small, but the first level. Just like a child, when you tell him you have a father. Okay, that's the beginning faith. But the next step in faith, the higher level of faith, he learned from the second Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, that he explains how the fact that you have a father influences your life. But again, faith, emunah, even in the lower levels, is something that's above the world. When you have real faith in something, it's the next level. It's something that connects you to something above. And that faith it has the ability to purchase. If we say it in the most simplest way, if you buy something, you need to have faith in it. So this is a good shiur on how to purchase, how to buy, how to acquire things, how to do things. You do things with faith, and with that faith, you go and acquire, and you connect to the thing that you acquire. Okay, that's hopefully, Be'ezrat Hashem, the Rav said that this year he'll give many shiurim on this acquisition on kinyan, the law of kinyan and the inner parts of kinyan. But I think this is a beginning of a good introduction for this kinyan. So if anyone has any questions, we'll try to answer. Okay, if there's no questions, we'll say Shavua Tov to everyone. And Be'ezrat Hashem, with the right faith, we can acquire Torah, which would hopefully lead us, Be'ezrat Hashem, to real Geulah. And Shavua Tov to everyone.